Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the episode of Neptune Sunday. It's your boy V Moss. 2026. This is technically the start of season 6, so happy to be back. This is a big year for anniversaries, for albums and moments or whatever in the Neptunes universe. So let's get right into it. April 4th, 2006. Pharrell gives us the In My Mind prequel, Gangsta Grillz Mixtape. Drama went on a really crazy press run like 2023, right before his album I Really Like That came out. And during a lot of those interviews, Drama was asked about his favorite Gangsta Grillz projects, and he repeatedly included this Pharrell mixtape in his top 5 as being one of the most special projects that he did with the Gangsta Grillz series. So I thought that was really cool. I mean, obviously, we have this podcast because of what P and Chad and that whole crew, Star Trek movement, Neptunes, and the impact that they've had on me being a kid from Virginia. But just to see someone like Pharrell dive into that space that was typically for other Gangsta World projects done by mostly gangster rappers, southern rappers, and to have Pharrell hop in and do a Gangsta Grillz in the same vein as those guys, but do it his own way, was really cool. So, like I mentioned, Drama went on this press run. Part of that press run included this Audible podcast where he had conversations with a lot of the most famous and the most significant collaborators he had in the Gangsta Grillz series, and that included Jeezy, T.I., Lil Wayne, Tyler, the Creator, and for the 9th and final episode, he was able to get a sit down with Pharrell. The conversation is dope, and I think that I always feel like P has his best interviews, if you want to say that, for lack of a better term, just in the fact that when he's with other artists, especially people that he's collaborated with, because it feels more like a conversation. It's not necessarily an interview or when someone from the media talking to him. It's just, two people who are creative and talking about the thing that they love and things that they're passionate about. So just wanted to go over some key moments. I thought that was a good reference point. A lot of stuff that would be important to talk about in an anniversary episode about this mixtape would be in a conversation with the two of them, the two most important people in the project. So Drama references that conversation that he had with Tyler about how important In My Mind was to Tyler as an artist and to Tyler as a kid, just like me. I'm a little bit older than Tyler, but just in the same vein of just growing up in a different space and being other, and being able to occupy a space like that, like I said. But also just talking about how the In My Mind prequel mixtape really set the tone and laid the foundation for them to be able to collaborate, Tyler and Drama, on Call Me If You Get Lost Later, which is one of the best albums in the past few years here. And definitely helped continue to skyrocket Tyler to superstardom, but also I think expose a different generation, a different audience to, the greatness that DJ Drama has given to the music industry. Pharrell in this interview also said that he didn't feel worthy of this opportunity because of the rap legends like we mentioned, Wayne and Jeezy and T.I. that had helped make Gangsta Grillz what it was. He didn't feel like that was a space that he was really set to occupy. And so he said, quote, that he was glad he only did one mixtape. He said was glad he only did one mixtape like this because it brought out an energy of him that he didn't necessarily always want to have to live up to. The quote that he had is, "I felt like I needed to prove something. That's when you get the human spirit at its best, when it is being tried, when it is being doubted, or when it is curious about what is on the other side." I think that quote resonated with me just in reference to this mixtape for sure. I feel like he talks about it on the mixtape about how this helps set up and set the tone for In My Mind, the album. But also I think it's just a great quote about life in general. Who you are and you get to reflect and try to figure out who's the best version of yourself when you're in opportunities where you're being doubted or obstacles are in front of you that you got to overcome. So I thought that was a cool quote. Drama and P recorded this episode in Paris, which as we know now is P's living in Paris as the men's creative director of Louis Vuitton. So it was a cool moment at the end of towards the end of the interview where P was able to like say and give credit to the mixtape and give credit to Drama, because it kind of helped, get on this path, which we'll talk a little bit more later about how some of the references of LV on the mixtape, help really set the tone for this relationship between P and help to continue to grow or expose it. And now you look at them and they're having this conversation about that mixtape in Paris while he's working at Louis Vuitton. Real quick, unrelated to the mixtape itself, another thing that I thought was cool about their conversation, they remember when they first met, which was in Atlanta, at a place that T.I. was staying when he was on house arrest, and just talked about Big Meech and some other people being there. But what ended up happening is Pharrell talks about how that's the night that he recorded Freak Though. So I thought that was a cool story. And the last thing about the interview that's not related to the mixtape, P mentions that he would have loved to see Jay-Z do a Gangsta Grillz, like in the same vein that he did it, where it was like, whatever beats you want, showcase your talent on whatever you think are some of the hottest beats of all time, of all in any genre, right? I think that that's a similar freedom that Pharrell had that I think Jay-Z could easily have. And timestamp on this today is the 3rd of April, but last week Jay-Z came back outside officially with the GQ interview, Yankee Stadium shows on sale, Roots Picnic announcement. Just yesterday, he was seen leaving LV with P, so you can only assume that music is coming. So it's definitely on the way, and no time better than now. Like, if it was ever gonna happen, like a Jay-Z Gangsta Grillz would be insane. Like, I think we know that there's been a lot going on in the world of Hov over the past few years, and he's kind of like not had a chance to address all of it, whether publicly or on wax. So I feel like a Gangsta Grillz mixtape is kind of like the perfect energy to like get on some beats and air it all out. But Hov, it's we don't. It's very difficult to put any expectations on Hov these days. Like, Hov's gonna do what Hov's gonna do, and we'll just be happy with whatever we get. All right, so let's get into it, song by song from the mixtape. Before we get into the each song, I just want to say a couple things about the beats. I think the songs that he chose kind of really show how much of a student of hip hop and a lover of hip hop Pharrell is, especially when you think about his love for the native tongues and Q-Tip and Tribe and like some of the backpack rap that kind of shows up a little bit. But overall, it's still like some very hardcore, like diehard hip hop fans that appreciate the beat selection on this mixtape. I think also it's very important that the mixtape still has beats and songs from Southern hits as well, right? Like, one, it keeps the continuity for what you expect if you're like not a fan of Pharrell, but you are a fan of Gangsta Grillz because of what they did, what Drama was able to do with Wayne and Jeezy. So you want to check it out, even though you're not necessarily looking to think that you're going to hear a bunch of great raps or great songs from Pharrell, but you check it out anyway. So for you to check it out and then you get reminded that, or you get exposed to the fact that, like, if you're a Southern rap fan checking out a Gangsta Grillz by Pharrell, like, he did a great job of mixing in the Southern beats. So you know that he's more than just the futuristic sounding beats and the front and falsetto. Like, he can actually rap, and he's actually tapped in with the music and tapped in with hip hop everywhere across the board. And so I love talking about VA to PA, Philly specifically, because I lived in Philly, but the VA to GA connection is pretty strong too. And obviously we know that from a Pharrell and Neptunes standpoint, that's really got a lot to do with T.I., because Pharrell was in there from the beginning with T.I. on T.I.'s first album. But I think on top of the beat selection, what we talked about, Jeezy, Trap or Die, Youngbloods, Damn, produced by Lil Jon, Grillz, which is, Nelly and Paul Wall, but produced by Jermaine Dupri. It just shows that P was able to sprinkle in and stay relevant, stay current, stay connected to what the Gangsta Grillz brand really meant musically. And I think that was a good way to make this whole mixtape kind of like do what it did to be able to touch so many people and impact so many people. In addition to the beat section, right? And we'll get into this in a second too, obviously, with having the features from T.I. and Dro. And so I think the beat selection was very good. I think from a mixtape standpoint, you know, like we talk about We Got It For Cheap Volume 2 as being one of the best beats. So it's just kind of like you got that producer's ear about what songs are going to be able to make a statement. So overall, I love the song. And, you know, I think it did a good job, like I said, having those current Southern hip-hop beats, but also having those old school hip-hop beats, expose some beats and songs to a different generation that they might not have otherwise been able to connect with. So starting it off, Prequel intro, I think any classic mixtape's got to start with some bragging, some shit talking. So like I think he does a good job on that. But then we get straight into it when Skateboard came, which is Liquid Swords by the GZA. Like I've heard people say this, and this including my boy Dave, who's part of the friends group that does my podcast with me sometimes. Like the amount of Wu-Tang presence on this mixtape was like an introduction to Wu-Tang and that whole crew to a lot of people, which I think is, again, dope. Like, he's able to help bridge that gap by this guy that people know, Pharrell, from the Neptunes, from Nerd, but then he's rapping on these old school beats and rapping on Wu-Tang beats and people being able to make that connection. So I thought that was dope. And so starting it off with Liquid Swords by GZA, I thought was cool. And then, I mean, the raps are, like, he raps on that. Like, I think it's very clear when Skateboard came with them big-ass chains, like, he's making a statement on the first song. But then the next song, man, Music for the Gangstas, which is the beat for instrumental for Jeezy Trap or Die. Man, I mean, Pharrell does what he does, like, but this is an Atlanta rap, a Southern rap classic. It's Skateboard over Trap or Die from Virginia, aka Hustler's Paradise. Like, had us all in Virginia, like, yo, cause people in Virginia love Jeezy, so this connection, like, had a lot of people paying attention, like, oh, word. So obviously Pharrell's raps is what it is, but like, this is one of my favorite T.I. verses because of the way he floats on it to wrap the song up. But I'm a big fan of Young Dro, and this is like, for me, top 3 Dro verses. Dro's got some crazy verses, but we know that when Dro gets in that colorful raps bag, man, like, what do you say? Dope, same color spaghetti, you know, off-white noodle, yay. Like, ice white grape J's, like, just Dro went crazy. So, like, the combination of the 3 of them on Trap or Die, like, was a very important, a statement song on this mixtape. Next up is Fortified, which is a high-tech track. I think it's like Mos Def and Talib Kweli maybe on there. But this is a song that I had never heard of before the mixtape. It's also, I was listening to the other day, and I just remembered, like, I don't know if it was because I didn't have enough room on the CD or if it was too many songs or whatever, but Fortified wasn't initially on the CD that I had burnt of this mixtape when I was, like, wearing it out, riding around Hampton and Richmond for that whole spring and summer in 2006. So when I think I downloaded it again or something like that a few years later, but I mean, Fortified is cool. Like, the beat is cool. Like I said, I never heard it before. Pharrell does his thing on Fortified. But then this is one of my favorite tracks. This Is My Life, which is P rapping on the Damn Beat by Youngbloods featuring, produced by Lil Jon. Like I said, Southern beat. This is our first Star Trek feature of the mixtape. FamLay hops on there and he kills it too. One of my memories I wanted to talk about is, and if you've heard me talk about this on the podcast before, I do like have a marketing background, and so like this idea of, we're all exhausted with influencer marketing, and so rappers have been selling us stuff for years now, all types of stuff that we don't necessarily always need, right? Like selling us clothes, selling us liquor, whatever. But on This Is My Life, P says, I'm on a PJ sofa reading Deepak Chopra, trying to figure out how I'm going to act on Oprah. And I don't know what it was about that, like that made me look up like who is Deepak Chopra. And so I looked it up and I was like, oh, he's got this. And this is when I'm like going into my junior year of college. So I'm almost also like just trying to figure out what's going on in life. But I looked it up, Deepak Chopra. I was like, oh, okay, he's got this book. And so I ended up buying it. Or maybe my mom gave it to me, but I still have it. It's the 7 Spiritual Laws of Success here. This is not a paid advertisement for Deepak Chopra, but just, you know, it's one of those things where it's like, yo, like if I can go out and buy Armadale because Jay and Dame told me to, I can go buy a book about like trying to be more spiritual and find my way to success. But like that's strictly because of this mixtape. Me hearing Pharrell talk about Deepak Chopra in this mixtape. All right, next song is Gangsta Grillz, which is the song Grillz by Nelly, Paul Wall. I think there's a couple of St. Lunatics on there too. Big Gip. Again, the Houston connection. That's another reason why, like I said, the southern hits. That Houston connection was important. It was hyped to hear him on this song because of the Houston connection, even though it's Paul Wall in there, but Slim Thug, who just had his first album on Star Trak, only album on Star Trak, dropped the year before. So cool to hear P rap on this Houston themed track. Again, like showing love to the South. The whole second verse on this song is him talking about a trip to Atlanta, which is dope. He ends it with like, throw 20 grand up whenever Jeezy says yeah, give a new meaning to the phrase there's money in the air. I was there. It's like, yo, like I'm really outside. Like y'all, I know y'all think I'm runway because I'm nerd. I'm singing, fronting, but like he's out here in the South too. Like, so that's one of my favorite tracks. The next one, It Was a Great Day, which is on the Ice Cube, Today Was a Good Day. Man, I mean, Today Was a Good Day was such a classic hip hop song because of the storytelling that Ice Cube did, like just to paint this perfect like picture of a perfect day in LA. And I think Pharrell does a little bit of that here on this song. It's just about stunting, about the luxuries of his everyday life, right? Like I mentioned before, the connection between this mixtape and Louis Vuitton, a bunch of Louis Vuitton references. I think this has one of my favorite Louis Vuitton references when he says, I deal with LV, but that's so hard, but I stick with LV because I get it no charge. So it's like, yo, like that's a huge flex, like a crazy stunt, but you got to give him the credit for a little bit of foreshadowing, a little bit of manifestation there, like to go from that line and some other lines that we'll talk about, that he talks about LV on this mixtape, to 20 years later being like living in Paris and having a whole studio to do music and fashion at Louis Vuitton Headquarters is really dope. That you got to respect, like to be able to speak something into your life, into existence like that. That's cool. Next up is the interlude, Model in the Hood with Carolina Krakova, supermodel KK. I think she was a Victoria's Secret angel. I think she might have been a host or a guest or something on America's Top Model, which was crazy back in the early 2000s. But it's silly, it's funny. All right, next up is Liquid Swords, but this song is actually the beat from GZA's Fourth Chamber. Again, another LV reference. We wanted this life, we salivated like wolves, blow 100 grand in LV leather goods. A bunch of great raps on this one. I think, what is that? I think that's probably, if we go back, so Liquid Swords by the GZA, and then we're going, okay, and then this Fourth Chamber. So far that's the second Wu-Tang Wu-Tang crew beat that's used. After Liquid Swords is Sound Boy, which is a song by Smith & Wesson. Again, another 90s hip-hop record that just shows how much P knows. On this particular song, like, and he does this a couple times throughout the mixtape, and he does it on In My Mind too, but like I always found it super interesting to hear P rap about like the drug dealing game or like the streets, because he always did it from a perspective of like an insider who's not really in it. You know what I mean? Like an observer who's like knows everyone who's doing it and knows all the things that go into it, and he raps about it in a way like where you feel like he knows exactly what he's talking about, even though you don't expect him to be a player in it. Like you don't expect him to be someone who's doing it, but it just shows. And obviously we know him having such a great relationship with Pusha and Malice, who are like the guys in this drug game, coke rap. It just shows like I thought that was really dope, and just artistic perspective that he was able to give by being himself, but still talking about what's relevant to him and relevant to people around him, even though he didn't actually participate in it. After Soundboy is Paid in Full, Eric B and Rakim, OGs in hip hop, like one of the quintessential, like foundational hip hop track. Good raps from P on here. Really dope. This is a great feature from my man Ab-Liva, VA to PA, Philly Zone, North Philly Zone. So it's good to have Ab-Liva on there. Hear him mix into the mixtape here. And then this was a perfect segue into the next song, which is Come Go With Me, which is the beat for Incarcerated Scarface. Is about Raekwon. So here is our third Wu-Tang Clan crew track that he's rapping on. I think obviously P snapped on this one as well, but I was just super happy. You gotta remember, this is spring 2006, and we haven't had a Clipse album since August 2002. So like to hear the Clipse on this was a big deal. Obviously we had, the We Got It For Cheap mixtapes that had come out during this hiatus period, one in 2004, and then the most recent one, Volume 2, had just dropped in I think like December 2005. But Pharrell had some crazy verses on We Got It For Cheap Volume 2 as well, including the Maybe remix that he did over Outkast Elevator's beat. So when you look back at it, it's dope to think of like that all these good raps was being cooked up around the same time. Like We Got It For Cheap Volume 2, in my mind the prequel, in my mind the album, and then eventually we would get Hell After No Fury. But you think about that collective of people who was just like around that, like Clipse, so Pusha, Malice, Sandman, Ab-Liva, Roscoe's mixed in there, Pharrell rapping, like FamLay is in there. Like it's crazy. It's crazy because it's crazy to think that all that kind of just was brewing at the same time, and some of the best raps, some of the best music to come out of that collective in general, but some of the best raps of that time too. So then next up is an interlude called Star Trek Movement, where Peach is kind of giving an update on what's happening with the Star Trek family. When he talks about the Star Trek family, he mentions Rosco P. Coldchain and some legal drama he had going on right then. So for those of you who don't know, Rosco actually just came home in 2023 and is back outside musically. Happy to see that. He dropped a project in 2024, but he's about to drop another project collaboratively with Nicholas Craven later this month. He just did it on the radar freestyle this week too. So happy to see Rosco out. Like what he contributed to Star Trek, I think at the time was very unique. And it was very underrated. Like we really wish that we could have got more from him during that era. Like some of the highs that he missed for what happened in the Star Trek fam that we wish he could have been a part of. But he's still connected with the Star Trek fam. Like obviously he's still collaborating with his Philly guy Ab-Liva. But Rosco came out with the Clipse at Roots Picnic last year, which was dope. And I think if you go back to Something in the Water in 2023, the Clipse were supposed to perform on night 2, Sunday night, and bad weather, they canceled the whole day. But he was supposed to come out with them too. I think they ended up doing like a pop-up show locally in Virginia Beach, and they had all those guys go out there. Because that would have been the celebration of Laura Willing. Because Lord Willing came out in August 2002. And I think this was April 2023. So yeah, sucks we missed out on that, but glad Roscoe's home. Glad Roscoe's out here and making moves. Speaking of the Star Trek family, after that, we get Skrung Owt, a solo street single from man FamLay. Second appearance by FamLay on this mixtape. This song was popping in Virginia. Like, I can't stress to you how much we as a collective hip hop fans, rap music fans in Virginia were just ready for the FamLay album to drop. Especially when my man got put on Def Jam, well, I think it was the second one, so like Fight for New York probably. But yo, I mean, the singles and the Lucy's were there. I mean, having like the freestyle on Lord Willin', and then that turned into a full version featuring Scarface and T.I. later. Fire. Ambulance, obviously Skrung Owt, Fresh and Driving, like, yo, it was there, like, and it just sucks because like we have a lot of pride in Virginia of like all the people that have done great stuff and great music, and Fam is a part of that. No matter what anyone else outside of Virginia thinks about that, like just being around and having rock and roll go as crazy as it did, and us being able to have and experience those songs that I just mentioned, the Lucy's, like, album would have been fire, but hey, FamLay is still the homie. We still got a lot of love for FamLay and what he did musically. So after Skrung Owt is Renegotiations, another interlude. This is basically a Louis Vuitton commercial. He's like talking about all these things he gets to do with them. Like as a kid, I'm a kid in Virginia. I'm not a kid. I was 20. But I'm like, I have no idea who Marc Jacob is, but now I do because of Pharrell talking about all this stuff on this mixtape. And so then next up is The Message, which is on the beat for Grandmaster Flash and Furious 5. The Message. This is one of my favorites. I think this might be my favorite. But it's the perfect song to follow the bragging of Renegotiations just by the way he starts off the verse. Esquire and GQ, don't kid yourself trying to say me too. Rid yourself of thinking that me's you. You ain't me, and nigga, you can't be. Like, just thinking about that the other day, like him saying me too in there, it makes you think like, again, going back to this being all happening at the same time, like you wonder if maybe that was a verse left off, or, you know, was an original verse from Mr. Me Too. You never know. Could have inspired Mr. Me Too. Next song is High Rollers, which is Ice-T. For those of you who are younger and may not have heard any music from Ice-T, you would recognize him as one of the stars of Law & Order SVU. But he was a rap pioneer before that. Again, P showing off like he's really a student of this rap, of the music though. Like, so on the hook of this song, he says make money, money, make money, money, money as like the chorus, but it's a nod to the song Make Money, which is spelled Munne, which is a Black Moon song that actually uses the interpolation of Ice-T's High Roller. So just having a connection there, being able to say like a show like, yo, what I'm doing is super intentional. I'm not just out here just picking these beats, like I'm picking them for a reason and putting it all together. So I thought that was a dope thing that I caught when I was going back and looking at the track list. And then next up is Word to the Motherland, which is Word to the Mother, Big Daddy Kane. Another ode to a hip hop pioneer, classic Big Daddy Kane beat. Again, this is him talking about the rap game, the drug game from his perspective as an outsider, as an observer. Real niggas save up for out of state but collect stash houses. Drive Jeep wagons, taxiderminate couches. Like, the storytelling, I think, is a combination here of like talking about the drug game as an observer and being able to tell stories about it in a way where it's just like you're narrating it, which I think is a crazy thing that is really dope to hear, because it's not just about, like, he could easily have tried to rap like he was trying to perpetrate, like he was doing it, but I think that this is more authentic and shows like he's able to still connect it with it even though he wasn't actually selling drugs. So wrapping up the mixtape, he's got the outro, and this is where P says, "This is what I'm preparing you for. I needed to get that out of my system, and I needed to fucking let you step on a rung. The rung is a step in a ladder. I needed you to step on the first rung to understand where the fucking top of the ladder is heading, and that's my album." And I'm not ashamed to say, in 2006, like, I had no idea that the step on the ladder was called a rung until I heard Pharrell say it. So if that also applies to you, like, don't be ashamed. But yeah, I think that was definitely a perfect summation of just like what this mixtape was for us, as like, especially the fans, like, just to set it up to like, okay, let's hear all these great raps, like, because eventually we're gonna get this album that's gonna be half raps and half singing, and that's cool. But people like me, I think fans like me who love hip hop and love rap and like are fans of, you know, what Pharrell and Chad, and, you know, specifically Pharrell as an artist, have done, like, Pharrell is an underrated rapper to me. I mean, I was listening to our Pharrell raps bracket the other day that we did back in 2023, and like, he's got to be, him and Kanye, at the top of the conversation for the best producer rappers. Like, we know them as producers, but they also rap. Not the other way around, like someone like J. Cole, who we know is a rapper who also produces. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think P is in the same category with Ye and Swizzy in that space, whereas, you know, I think someone like J. Cole's more in the space of like Crit and like Q-Tip, right? But Pharrell, I think Pharrell doesn't get as much credit as a rapper as he should. And then not last song, but next up is the song Reminisce, which is on the beat for Straight Up Menace by MC8 from the Menace to Society soundtrack. I think Pharrell's raps on this really draw inspiration and connection to the same, like, the vibe of that song originally, and also just connection to the California culture, gang culture, and the connection to that movie. He starts off the verse saying rest in peace to Tukey Williams, co-founder of the Clipse, who he admits he didn't know personally but feels connected to because of his friend Snoop, a well-known Crip, obviously, and then Jamie Foxx, who actually played Tukey in a movie about his life. And then he goes on, sticking with that theme. He talks more personally about a guy named Black Mike, who was a skateboarder from Cali, who was going to be on the skateboard team and was super close with somebody who actually was on the skateboard team, Compton-ass Terry Kennedy, and talks about like their relationship, but also talks about Black Mike getting shot, and also talks about Terry Kennedy getting shot. And so I think that was really cool for him to tie that all in with that, like the vision of that song, telling those stories that are like he's almost telling his own version of a story that could have been in part of Menace to Society. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I thought that was cool. But then, like, just on the side note, just sticking with the Terry Kennedy, Black Mike part of it, like, got to give P credit for what he did to help create visibility and opportunity for black kids that were, like, trying to make a name for themselves or just interested in skateboarding in general, with what he did with the ice cream skateboard team, with the skateboard shoes, and just all that. So I thought that was the dope themes and kind of like messages for this last song. So I think you call that the last song, but then next is the bonus track. And I think that the end of Reminisce, and then I think Drama like has that quick ad-lib that bleeds over into the start of Lavish as the bonus track, which is like, Lavish was released on Twista's The Day After album in October 2005. And for some reason in my brain, I don't know if it was just because, I don't know. For some reason, I thought that the mixtape came out before the album dropped. And like that was Lavish being debuted. But according to Wikipedia, the day after it came out in October 2005, and this mixtape came out in April 2006. And I feel like maybe the timing is what it is, and I was wrong. But I probably just didn't, like, I wasn't really checking for this album when it came out, because the singles were kind of like, we're talking 2006, so a lot of the singles were still trying to, like, you're still trying to get that club single, you're still trying to get that single for the ladies. And I think that he had the one song that had Trey Songz on it, the Twisted album, and then I think they had like Hit the Floor, which was like Pitbull, that like supposed to be a club. So like, even though I might have had those two songs on the iPod, I wasn't like necessarily like trying to catch that whole album. So when I heard Lavish, I'm like, bro, what? This is crazy. And it ended up having Neptunes had another song on that. I think that's AEIOU with Jamie Foxx. But back to Lavish. So again, I mentioned the Pharrell Raps bracket episode we did. Lavish ended up winning the bracket, and we picked that because we gave P credit for the fact that like he had this sped up flow. He's rapping next to Twista, who is the fastest rapper of all time, and he held his own. And like, he wasn't trying to rap as fast as Twista, but he was like, he picked up his flow, and it was intentional, and it was a good verse. And then also, like, we talked about this on the episode too. When P gets in this bag on songs like that, where you get him and Chad, Neptunes, or Pharrell himself solo producing it, okay, cool. But then he's gonna come up with the hook. He's on the hook, singing the hook, or rapping the hook, or whatever. Okay, cool. But then he's gonna rap too, like an actual verse, and then it's a good verse. Like that, like Lavish is just the total package when we think about songs like that, where P shows off triple double, no assists, like doing all these different things to make the song great. And one of my favorite rap verses from P of all time. So mixtapes, like, you know, I wasn't super heavy into the mixtape game, and I listened to most of the Gangsta Grillz, like, because I'm a big T.I. fan, like I've talked about on here before. Got a lot of respect for Lil Wayne, so like I think Dedication 1 and 2 were crazy, and then Jeezy, so. But this obviously is my favorite, and I'm biased, as you can imagine. But Pharrell rapped. I think this was the rap album that we got from him that we will never get. Like, don't expect him to ever do solo anything anytime soon. But you know, we got In My Mind, which was half rap, but it wasn't like this, right? Like it was a different, like you said, he had to get this out of his system because it was different than what was on In My Mind. Not better, not worse, just different. And so I'll say it was, I didn't really spend that much time with it, but because it was too hard and I didn't really want to go back and forth. So just off the top of my brain, top 3 songs from this mixtape, I think I got to go with The Message for P's raps. I think that's probably my favorite verse on here from P. I think, and that doesn't include Lavish, because I think Lavish doesn't count because it's an actual song. I'm talking about like from the mixtape tracks. So The Message, I think I got to go Music for Gangsta just because of what that means for him hopping on that Southern classic beat with T.I. and Dro standing next to him on a Jeezy beat. That's crazy. And then again, I think I'm going Today Was a Great Day, or It Was a Great Day, or whatever it's called. Just because of the storytelling about that. And I loved how in the second verse too, we talk about this on this show, and we talk about it in conversations we have about, you know, what Pharrell and Chad and Shay and the whole crew means to us, specifically Pharrell, for black kids that wanted to feel like that we were other, right? So to have him on that second verse of It Was a Great Day, just talking about they used to laugh at me, you know what I mean? All of that. But it wasn't always like that. They just laughed at me. They wanted to treat me nasty. I was a backpacker, not a gag grabber. Only elevation seemed like the crack lap. Like, all of that to get to where he's at, luxury, like to had that combination of him talking about being nerdy, but then switching to like, now look at me doing all this stuff that I love, living this life of luxury. It still made us feel like, yo, you can be who you want to be and still be able to find your way out. So that's why I like the second verse on to It Was a Great Day. So those are my top three. The message, music for gangsters, It Was a Great Day. I'd say honorable mention to Liquid Swords. But there's a lot of good raps. It's a lot of good raps. And it's not even quantifying it as good raps for Pharrell. It's like, it's a lot of good raps. So if you are old enough to have experienced this mixtape in real time, congratulations, you're old. But if you haven't, definitely go check it out. It is actually on streaming, came on streaming, I think maybe either last year or the year before, and it stayed there, which is great. I literally listened to it a couple times this week. So go check it out on wherever you stream your music. Or let me take that back. I know it's on Apple Music. I don't know if it's on Spotify or Tidal. If you use those other platforms, go find that out yourself. But it is on Apple Music for sure. So go check it out or go revisit it if you loved it like I loved it. As always, thank you for listening to the Neptune Sunday podcast. Make sure you follow us on social media at Neptune Sunday. And then make sure you also check out the Virginia Hip Hop Foundation, which is a nonprofit that I co-founded to help continue to celebrate. Like I've been doing it with this podcast, but doing some more content and programming to keep celebrating the great work that people from Virginia have made and contribution they made to influence hip hop and hip hop culture. So make sure you follow Virginia Hip Hop Foundation. Just more information is at www.virginiahiphopfoundation.org. Catch y'all later. Peace and love.